Rejected Moon. Episode 1. Unchosen. Written by Mia. There is a particular cruelty in being told your whole life that the moon will choose you, and then being raised to expect that she will choose you last. I had heard the story 1,000 times. Every pup in Greywater Hollow heard it before they could walk, that on the night of your 19th birthday, under the full choosing moon, the goddess reaches down into the marrow of you and lights the bond that has been waiting there since before you were born. Somewhere in the world, there is a person made to fit the empty shape inside you, and on that one night the moon shows you who. It is supposed to be the most beautiful thing that will ever happen to you. For an Omega, it is also supposed to be the only thing. I was an Omega, the lowest rung of a ladder that did not bend for anyone, least of all for a girl with no rank, no parents anyone would name, and a habit of being looked through rather than at. I had spent 19 years learning the exact size I was allowed to take up in a room, which was to say almost none, and I had gotten good at it. I could carry a stack of laundry past the Warriors' Hall, and not one of them would register that the laundry had hands. I could sit at the long tables during the feasts and eat in the gaps between other people's elbows. I had made myself small the way you make a fist around a candle flame in the wind, because in Greywater the only thing more dangerous than being noticed was being noticed and found wanting. So when I let myself hope, and I did, that last morning, I let myself hope so hard it frightened me. I hoped for something modest. I did not dream of an alpha. Omegas were not given to alphas. Everyone knew that. It was practically a law of nature, like water running downhill. I dreamed of a quiet beta with kind hands. A hunter, maybe, or one of the men who mended the fences along the eastern ridge. Someone who would come home tired and let me put food in front of him, and once, just once, look at me as though I were the thing he had been walking toward all day. That was the whole of my ambition, to be walked toward. That last morning I had laid the gray dress out on my cot and looked at it for a long time. It had been Pell the Weaver's before she outgrew it, and Pell had not so much given it to me as left it folded outside my door the way you leave out scraps you don't want to watch being taken. There was a wine stain on the hem I had scrubbed for an hour and only managed to make paler. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself the moon did not check your hem. But when Tessa and the other coming-of-age girls passed me on the path, their hair already braided through with river pearls, Tessa looked at the dress and then at my face and smiled the small, kind-seeming smile that is the cruelest kind there is. "I do hope the goddess can find you in all that gray," she said, and the others laughed, and I smiled back, because smiling back was a thing I knew how to do. Mara found me at the spring before dawn, where I had gone to wash because I did not want anyone watching me try to make myself beautiful and failing. She was the oldest wolf in the hollow, and the only one who had ever spoken to me as though I might still be in the room after she stopped looking at me. She was also, the pack agreed in the low voices they used for her, more than a little mad. "You're up before the birds," she said, lowering herself onto the flat rock beside me with the slow care of old bones. "On the morning of all mornings. Couldn't sleep?" I slept. It was a lie, and she let it be one. She studied me in the gray light the way she studied weather, looking for the thing under the thing.
"Ren," she said.
"Whatever happens tonight under that moon, you remember it's the moon doing the choosing."
"Not them."
"Not him. The moon."
"People forget that."
"They think the bond is a verdict on what they're worth." Her hand, dry and light as a leaf, closed over mine. "It isn't. It's only a door. What comes through it is the question." I did not understand her then. I would understand her before the night was over, and I would spend a long time afterward wishing I had asked her to say more while she still could. The choosing was held in the old amphitheater, a bowl of worn stone steps cut into the hillside where the whole pack could sit and watch the floor below. By the time the sun went down, it was full. 300 faces ringed around the dark, torch smoke threading up into a sky that was clearing, thank the goddess, clearing to let the moon through. There were 6 of us coming of age this season. The other 5 stood together near the front, enclosed their families had spent the year sewing. I stood a little apart, in a gray dress that had been someone else's gray dress first, and I held my own elbows so my hands would have somewhere to be. When the moon broke over the eastern ridge, it came up enormous and white, and a sound went through the crowd, that low collective exhale that means now. It's now. The elders began the calling. One by one the others were brought to the center of the floor, and one by one the moon lit them. It is a real thing, the lighting. I had never been close enough to see it properly before, and it stole the breath out of me. When the bond catches, the moonlight seems to thicken around the 2 of them, pooling, drawn down out of the air like water finding a low place, and for a moment you can see it, an actual cord of pale light strung between 2 chests, humming. The first girl was matched to a young hunter from the riverside, and the 2 of them stood there glowing and weeping and laughing all at once, and the crowd roared, and her mother had to be held up. It happened 5 times. 5 times the moon reached down and made a verdict, and 5 times Greywater Hollow howled its joy into the dark, and I stood at the edge with my arms around myself and felt the old wanting rise in me until it hurt to swallow. The 5th pair was a boy I had carried water past 1,000 times and a girl from the high meadows, and when the cord of light strung itself between them, he dropped to his knees the way you kneel when your legs simply stop believing in you, and she laughed and hauled him up, and the whole bowl of the amphitheater shook with the sound of 300 wolves who had each, once, felt exactly that. I felt it in my own chest like a struck rib. That was the cruelty of standing so close. Not that I might be passed over, but that I could feel, secondhand and exact, the shape of the thing I was about to be denied. My wolf, the small, quiet shadow of her I had never been permitted to fully become, paced once beneath my skin and went still. Then the elder turned and found me with her eyes and said my name. The roar did not come. The crowd had gone quiet the way a room goes quiet when someone drops something fragile. An omega being called to the center was unusual. Omegas were usually matched quietly after, away from the eyes of the pack, as though our bonds were a private embarrassment to be handled discreetly. But the law said every coming-of-age wolf stood under the choosing moon, and so I walked out onto the cold stone floor with 300 people watching me be small. I lifted my face to the moon. I thought, please, anyone, let it be someone who stays. And the moon answered. It did not pool gently the way it had for the others. It came down like a struck cord. The light dropped out of the whole sky at once and gathered on me so hard and so bright that people cried out and threw their arms up against it, and I felt the bond catch in my chest with a force that put me on my knees, not soft, not warm, a hook set deep and pulled, the empty shape inside me suddenly, violently full. I had never felt anything like it. I would learn later that no one in the hollow had ever seen a choosing burn that bright. The cord of light that sprang from my chest was not a thread. It was a rope, a blazing white rope, and it crossed the amphitheater over the heads of the gasping crowd, and it anchored itself in the chest of the man standing at the very top of the steps. The man standing in the place reserved for the alpha. Because he was the alpha, Cale Greywater, who had buried his father 8 months before and worn the title like armor ever since, Kale of the cold gray eyes and the jaw like a closed door. Kale whom I had served at 100 tables and who had never once seen me. The moon had reached into the marrow of me and chosen him. An omega and an alpha, bound brighter than anyone living had witnessed, in front of the entire pack. For one heartbeat, the silence was so complete I could hear the torches breathing. Then the noise started, not a cheer, a confusion, 300 people turning to each other. Did you see an omega, the alpha, it can't be, look at the light. And through all of it I knelt on the cold stone with my chest full of him and looked up the steps and let myself, for one ruinous moment, hope. He came down. He came down through the parting crowd with his face perfectly still, and the bond between us sang louder with every step he took, drawing tight, drawing me toward him so that it took everything I had not to crawl across the floor to be nearer to it. He stopped in front of me. Up close his eyes were not cold. That was the thing I would not be able to forget. Up close, for just a moment, there was something in them that looked almost like grief. "Get up," he said quietly. I got up. He looked at me, really looked, the first time in 19 years anyone of his rank had let their eyes rest on my whole face, and I saw him take in the borrowed dress and the thinness of my wrists and the place at my throat where an omega's bond mark would sit, and I saw the door close behind his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, and then, louder, pitched to carry to the highest step, to every ear in that stone bowl, "Greywater cannot have an Omega Luna." The bond between us was still blazing. He said it anyway. "I reject this match." His voice did not shake. "I reject the bond, and I reject the claim. Before the pack and under the moon, Wren of no house, I refuse you." I had been told what rejection does to an omega. We all knew. A severed bond is supposed to take the rejected wolf down like a felled tree. They say you feel the cord tear out of you root and all, and that for a while you cannot stand, cannot speak, that some never fully come back. It is why rejection is considered a kind of mercy never to be given lightly, and a kind of murder when it is. I braced for it. I stood on the cold floor with 300 people watching, and I waited for the tearing to put me on the ground. It did not come. I felt the bond go, felt him wrench it loose on his side, felt the blazing rope snap. And then I felt the broken end of it whip back into my chest, and instead of tearing me open, it sank in, white-hot, and coiled around something far down inside me that I had not known was there. Something that had been asleep my whole life. Something that woke. The moon flared. I do not have better words for it than that. The light that had gathered on me did not scatter when the bond broke, the way it should have. It brightened. It ran down my arms and stood my hair on end and lifted. I swear it lifted me half off my heels, and a sound came out of the sky that was not thunder, a long low note like the world's largest bell rung once, very far away, and 300 wolves flinched as one. Kale staggered back from me with his arm up and an expression on his face I had never thought to see on an alpha. He looked afraid. It lasted only a breath. Then the light guttered out of me all at once, and the night rushed back in cold and ordinary, and I was standing alone in the middle of the amphitheater floor with my heart slamming and my skin singing, and absolutely no idea what had just happened. Neither did anyone else. I could see it on every face turned down at me, that the thing they had come to watch was not the thing they had seen. My skin would not stop singing. That is the only word for it, a high thin hum along my arms and the back of my neck, as though the light, in leaving, had forgotten to take all of itself with it. My ears were full of that single far-off bell note, even though the night had gone silent. And under everything, low in my chest where the broken bond had sunk and coiled, Something turned over slowly in its sleep and settled, warm, patient, mine, in a way that nothing in 19 years had ever been mine. I should have been on the ground. I had been refused under the open moon, the worst thing one of us can do to another, and instead of grief, I stood there full of a strange, enormous quiet, like the held breath of the sky before snow. Kale recovered first. Alphas always do. He straightened and smoothed his expression back into the closed door and turned to the elders as though the last 10 seconds could be folded up and put away.
"It's done," he said.
"Clear the floor." But the old woman did not move to clear me. Mara had come down from her place on the steps without my seeing, and she crossed the stone to me now in the silence, and she took my face in both her dry, light hands and turned it up to what was left of the moonlight, and she looked at me for a long moment with an expression I could not read. "Oh, child," she breathed, too low for anyone but me. "Oh, you poor, dangerous child. He has no idea what he just let go of." Her thumb pressed once, gently, to the unmarked place at my throat. "And neither do you." Up on the steps the elders had drawn together into a knot of gray robes and low voices, and I saw one of them, Old Braun, who keeps the bond records, looking down at me and then writing something quickly, the way you note a thing you mean to report to someone else. Kale had turned his back. He stood at the top of the amphitheater with his shoulders set like a man walking into a wind only he could feel, and he did not look at me again. But I saw his hand, at his side, open and close once, slowly, as though it were holding on to something that hurt to hold. I would think about that hand for a long time afterward. Across the floor, near the dark mouth of the eastern tunnel where the warriors come and go, a man I did not know was watching me. He was not Greywater. I could see that even at a distance, in the cut of him, in the way the pack's wolves gave him a wide, unconscious berth without seeming to know they did it. He stood very still. And where everyone else in that amphitheater was looking at me the way you look at a thing that has gone wrong, he was looking at me the way Mara had told me that morning at the spring that I had always wanted to be looked at. He was looking at me the way you look at something you have been walking toward all your life. Our eyes met across the cold stone. He inclined his head once, the smallest bow, to me, to the unchosen Omega on the floor, and then the torchlight shifted and the tunnel took him, and he was gone before I could so much as breathe. "Mara," I whispered.
My voice did not sound like mine.
Something in my chest, down where the broken bond had coiled and sunk, was still warm, still turning, like a coal banked under ash. "Mara, what's happening to me?" She let go of my face. She looked, suddenly, very tired and very old, and more frightened than I had ever seen her. "Go home, Ren," she said. "Lock your door. Tell no one what you felt." She glanced once toward the empty mouth of the tunnel, and then up at the moon, and then back at me. "They rejected you tonight because they think you are nothing. By the next full moon, they are going to understand exactly how wrong they were, and when they do, this pack is going to want you back so badly, it will tear itself apart to have you." Her grip tightened. "You need to be ready before that happens, because you will not be the only one who comes looking." To be continued. That was episode 1 of Rejected Moon. If the moon has you now, the next episode is waiting. Subscribe so you don't lose the trail. The complete book is available on Amazon, and early episodes and bonus chapters are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
I've Mia.
Thank you for listening.